What is your real purpose? Because there's so many things that I could do. What is the most important thing I can do right now? I want the people that work here with us to feel like they're a part of something bigger than just themselves. When we were able to reopen, this was going to be like a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Why are you doing this? Because I want to empower people. I want to change people's lives.
Welcome back to Lost and Found. We're going to have a great discussion today. We're here talking to Toni from Rejuvenate Salon and Spa in New London. And I have been lucky enough to spend time with Toni in two different instances. Toni was one of our boot campers early on, and when she was really just getting her business off the ground. And we also got to spend some time together in our recent Reinvention program. So it's been an honor. Toni has a contagious amount of energy and passion for her business, which is what we all love when we get to be around her. So I'm really grateful to have you here, Toni. Thanks for coming. And if you wouldn't mind, just maybe give us a little introduction, starting with your why, which has been so powerful.
At Rejuvenate, we believe in empowering people to be the best version of themselves. And so we try and incorporate that into our services, also, how we mentor and train our staff so that, it's kind of a trickle effect.
So tell us, Toni, give us a little bit of a timeline. So how long have we known each other? Maybe 7 or 8 years, maybe?
Yeah, so I've been in business for 7. I went through startup, I think it was maybe 5 years ago, somewhere around there. Okay. So when I was going into startup, I was, like many entrepreneurs, working as a technician in my business. I was running business stuff. I was doing the hands-on services with clients, and I was just working, having a family, brand new family, and this opportunity for startup came along, and I thought, oh, I think that's kind of cool. I want to do that, and it's local here in my community, and so I thought that was cool, and I took away way more than I ever thought I would get from it, and I think the biggest thing was I realized why I actually do all this stuff. Why, I've grew up as somebody that had a lot of work ethic kind of driven into me as a kiddo. And so, but then, really determining why am I so passionate about all the things that I'm doing? And I was able to learn that through startup. And then I went to Reinvention, which I think kind of tapped more into me personally and what my purpose is in the business now that I'm no longer working behind my chair full time as a technician, and I'm doing more back end stuff, or I'm creating mentorship programs or different things like that. So refiguring out, sparking some new creation in me, or inspiration that, we work so hard, but, what is your real purpose? Because there's so many things that I could do, but right. What is the most important thing I can do right now? And so I think Reinvention helped me kind of get that creative spark again. Yeah,
you make such an important point, and you were sharing with me earlier about the fact that when you went through the program at first, you were really in the early stages. You were hands-on in the business. You were working behind the chair, as you say, and now you're in a completely different place with your business because it's scaled and grown. So I want to talk about that, but I want to just hop back to your comment about, you were really passionate about what you were doing, but you weren't clear on why. And what, you are unique. You have a lot in common with other entrepreneurs I see, though, too, and that they are you feel that passion, you're just so driven to get up in the morning and go do the thing. And it makes you happy on some level, but you haven't necessarily figured out why. Where is this all coming from? Why am I so compelled to go do this? Is that how you felt?
Yeah, because it never feels like work to me. It just never, I've worked other jobs in my life, not many, which is kind of interesting, but they were work. They were I got up and I went to my job and I went home. But this was just something that I just, I could stay up working late all the time, and until my husband kind of said, okay, you maybe can't do that all the time with this little one. It didn't feel like work to me. It was something that I loved doing so much. And And even still now, now I'm discovering things that are work and figuring out how to delegate those things because, I'm not the best person to do those things, which is another whole challenge and different, but yeah.
So the fact that it didn't feel like work, do you feel like that was sort of a clue that you were on the right track?
The first salon owner that I ever worked with, I think back to some different roles and positions. She gave me different responsibilities that I think she believed in me. And she, before I even knew that that was something that I would be doing is, I always wanted to be a salon owner, but she believed in me and saw something in me way back then that I didn't realize at the time when I was working there. That I look back now and I'm like, oh, yeah, this has probably always been a part of who I am. I just didn't realize it.
What a great story, because essentially it seems like you recognized the impact she made, and did it energize you to make that impact on the people you now employ and work with?
Yeah, and it's a big responsibility to be an employer. And so to recognize that, too, that's not an easy job for any of us, but it's good. You know, we can impact some lives, but it's a big responsibility also. Right.
So in the salon industry, when you were working with us earlier and you were just getting started, the salon industry is kind of has a traditional model in that it's sort of a chair rental concept, right? A salon owner may rent chairs to 5 or 6 stylists. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one business model, and there's a couple different ones, but yeah, that's one, and that's been really common in our area until just the last probably 2 or 3 years. There's been a little bit more opportunity for people to be employees versus being a renter. Yeah. But
and it seemed to me at that time you were like, I just want to do it different. You were doing it that way at that time. You were following that path, and you something in you just said, this is not me. This is not what I want to be doing. Can you explain how you identified that and how you figured out how to shift?
Yeah, so I guess, I started my business as kind of following in what I had been working in, right? My first job, I worked as an employee, and then I was there for about 3.5 years, and then I worked in a rental salon for 6 years. And so I just kind of went, okay, I knew that at that time, I didn't want to be a boss. Like, that's a standing joke in my business. I'm not the boss. It's a B word. It's a bad word. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it's something that we joke about all the time. But I didn't want to be a boss. So I thought, well, if I have renters, then I don't have to be, essentially I have the business, which is the big main umbrella. And these renters all are kind of working within my business underneath that umbrella, but they're all doing their own thing. They're running their own money. They're running their own schedule. I'm not doing any of that for anybody else. I'm only ordering products for me, for what I'm using. Behind the chair, they all take care of their own inventory. And so it just seemed like the easy thing to do, and it was familiar to me because I had been a renter for the last 6 years. So and then when I started really learning about marketing and running the books and all of those types of things, I was needed in places in my business that wasn't physically behind the chair, and it was challenging to have enough income coming in to cover me stepping away from my chair a little bit. And so that's really what kind of sparked me to start going, okay, I have to do this a little bit different. But my goal was always, I don't want to be like anybody else. I want this company to be different. I want it to feel like it's a different place to work. And I want the people that work here with us to feel like they're a part of something bigger than just themselves.
So you came to that realization, and it felt pretty powerful, if I remember. But then you had to do some really hard things to make that change. And I don't mean to put you on the spot because it's hard to share hard things. But on the other hand, so many business owners, I think, face this kind of dilemma where they know what they're doing doesn't fit anymore. They're not happy. It's not having the impact they want. So they have to change. And those are hard moments. So how did you work through that?
If I look at all the rental salons, the salon owners that are running rentals are working behind their chair. And I knew that, like, there wasn't enough finances for me to not do that. Like I had to hire an employee in order to bring in enough revenue to cover me not being behind my chair. And so financially, I knew that I had to do something different if I wanted to grow. If I wanted to just be a salon owner and come to work every day and take care of my clients and go home, and I didn't want to grow, it would work just fine, just the way it was. But that wasn't really where I was being led to go.
That's such a good point. Everyone wants something different out of their business. And there's no right or wrong. It's just recognizing, what do I want out of this business? Mm-hmm. And for you wanted opportunity to do it different.
Yeah, and even for my staff, it's something that I very openly talk about. Like, I've had the experience of being an employee. I've had the experience of being a renter. I think both business models can be very successful. Just one wasn't a fit for me and what I was trying to do. But I also think, like, I was that young stylist that always wanted to open her own salon. So I wouldn't discourage anybody from wanting to do that, but I just think I have so much I can share about it in my experience, and hopefully it helps somebody else to decide what's best for them, because I think I went into it even as a renter. I mean, I didn't know a lot about being a business owner, and essentially that's what you are. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. As a renter, you are a business owner. It's your responsibility to market yourself, do your books, make sure your inventory is good. And that's, more than people think it is. They think of it as just more freedom, which, you can set your own schedule, but yet you still got to do the work to make the income. So I think there's a big misconception that, salon owners that have employees, they don't give you the freedom of time that you want, or maybe they don't pay you well enough, or, different things like that. And I don't believe it has to be that way.
Right. So essentially what you're saying and what we're talking about here, for those of you who don't know Toni, is that she was able to shift her business model to being a rental style salon, to having employees that worked for her as stylists. And what that allowed you to do was reshape the culture of your company. Is that right? And give yourself something to build on. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So I was, trying to learn leadership. Because I felt like in order to have employees, you kind of have to lead them. You have to be, I was learning more about leadership, and for a little bit, I transitioned to have some employees and some renters, and that was a little challenging just because their mindsets are different, and that's okay. It should be that way, but it didn't work for me to blend, and so I did have to completely change my business model to being employee in order to get everybody in the same mindset that we're all working together for a greater, bigger vision that is going to impact all of us and not just individual mindset of people. So I think there's a place for everybody, but for us, it was trying to get people to come on board with me that could believe in what I believed in, right, in the change that we could make in this industry, and then also in our community. But, the rental facilities, that has been, I think that those are very common all across, the U.S., but I think that you can have a really good place to work as an employee too. And I think that we just have to kind of do it different than what people used to do it.
So to shift gears in the midst of a business model like that is difficult, because you risk losing employees or losing your renters, losing customers, but you were brave and you did it. And I know it was hard.
Yeah.
But also I think something to share with listeners about there's a part of this vision that also has to do with helping younger stylists coming out of school who don't have the opportunities or the business savvy yet to really become the stylist they could become. And your passion for mentoring those young women and men, coming out and helping them kind of shortcut that painful process of learning the ropes, so to speak, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can learn so much in school, and they do a great job. Even here at Ridgewater, we work a lot with them, but they only have so much time with you. They can only teach you so much, and their job is to teach you the real, basics, get you out into the workforce, and that's where you learn. I mean, I think that's for any industry. You're going to learn the most once you're out of school and you're actually working. And so what I felt like I wanted to do was just be that person that came alongside those new girls or people coming into our industry, and kind of tuck them under my wing a little bit and give them a little bit of guidance as to just things that I've learned on my own through the industry. And I didn't want to tell them what to do or how to do it. I wanted to come alongside them and show them that they are capable of doing these things if somebody just believes in them.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And I think, as I think about the mentorship program and how it evolves and changes all the time, and I think that the biggest thing that I help with is their confidence and their communication. I think those are big things that that impacts not only their work life, but their personal life. I mean, sometimes we're talking about how to set boundaries. I mean, that's something that we should all learn, right?
Right.
And, I didn't learn that until I was in my early 30s. And so I'm like, if I can share that and it can help somebody else, that's pretty cool.
So you actually created something you call the Empowerment Program, which is really a more holistic program for young people coming out of school that can kind of help them advance all aspects of their lives, right?
Yeah. I mean, we work with them on their skills. They learn their basic skill set in school. That's their job there. But then for us, we're just kind of giving them the tips and tricks that we've learned in the industry over time, things that we've picked up, outside of school, actually working hands-on. And then also personal development, some things we trickle in with that, goal setting, and, all of those different things to kind of social media. I mean, you go to a school for cosmetology, you never think you're going to have to learn how to take photos, like be a photographer or video record a testimonial from a client. So some of those things we touch on too, because those are a big part of how we get ourselves out in the world so people know that we even exist. So those are all important things that they can't possibly teach you all that in school. But
what an incredible undertaking to say that I'm going to be the person that tries to fill this gap and raise these women up. I learned some things from you, Toni, that I didn't know about the industry. Tell us what can happen to some of the graduates that don't get that kind of help, and what's kind of a prevailing problem?
Something that I saw when I first started kind of putting the empowerment program together is that people would come into our industry. There was here in our community, there was very few places that they could come and work as an employee. And so when you're coming straight out of school and you don't have a clientele, that's what you need, because that's a big overhead to kind of get started in renting. So there wasn't a lot of options for employee positions in this area. So they'd come in and they might start at a franchise or a bigger salon like that, and they just didn't seem like if they weren't getting the support they needed, pretty soon they were back in school, going to school for something different. So it was like we couldn't really. There was so many students coming out of the cosmetology program, but then either they couldn't find jobs in this area, they moved away back to different communities to get jobs, or they worked in this area for a little bit and then they, went back to school because they didn't feel like this was the industry for them. Because
it was too hard or it was too uncomfortable? Like, what are some of the complaints that you heard?
Well, I think a big part of it is how to communicate with your clients. And the first time you have somebody come back because the service wasn't exactly how they expected it to be, that's really hard to work through, and as a new stylist, you're already nervous about that. So some of the things that we try and do is make sure that we're teaching, how to go through a really thorough consultation. That's a big part of our training, because you have to get on the same page. Most of the time, if there's somebody's returning for something that didn't work out right, it's because they didn't communicate. Something was missed in communication right at the beginning of the service. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I just hadn't really recognized or realized that there was that problem, and it sounds kind of tragic that they have so little time in their industry before they just decide, I can't do this, I don't want to do this, it's not for me, and they have to start over.
Yeah.
And it's like you have a passion for this industry. Tell me why you love it enough to want to help these women make a career out of it. Why do you love the industry?
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm really I'm a creative person. I think what started me in the industry is just as a little girl, I always was doing hair and things like that. But I think where I am now has just evolved over time, and I feel like I've kind of been drawn to places that kind of pull out my personality a little bit more. I'm not sure. That's a good question, Betsy.
Well, you're very committed to it, and I would agree. It seems like for your personality, it seems like a really awesome fit. And your skills and talents, it's sort of like they meet in the middle in this industry. So now it's your concept has evolved. It's matured. Now you're in a different place with your business, right? You've had some years of experience, and you're ready to kind of make those next steps to grow. But that is challenging too, like almost as challenging, right, as getting started. So what are those challenges right now that you're facing as you want to grow?
Yeah, so I've kind of always had this thought that I can't imagine not working in my business, but I want my business to be able to run without me. Like, I want it to be able to go on if I get, something, I want to go on a trip, my family, or I have something medical happen. I want it to be able to run without me. So I've worked really hard at creating systems, and even with our empowerment program, doing recordings or keeping track of what I'm doing so that I can hand that over to somebody else and somebody else can actually do the same thing I do. I feel like right now I'm at the point where I'm trying to decide, do I physically run that empowerment program, or do I keep improving it on the back end and scaling it? I think something that's a challenge for me right now is learning how to delegate. Because I think that so many people probably struggle with not trusting somebody to do what they do. I don't really see it that way. I just feel like I don't want to just bombard people with a project and say, okay, this is going to be your job now because I'm not doing it anymore. And that's hard to learn how to delegate your things. Like, I think that if I, show people what my expectations are and we work together on it for a little bit, they can take it over. But just having the time to set aside to do all that, because I've been doing it for all these years, 7 years, and it's quick and easy. But at some point, I have to give more stuff away for somebody else to take responsibility for. And I think it's important to give more responsibility, too, because I think they have a bigger buy-in into the overall vision that way, too.
Right.
But that's challenging for me because I've never done it before. And there's no book on how to do it. I haven't read one yet. So there might be a book out there.
There might be. But I think, what a common problem is that, how do I delegate this precious part of my business that I've invested my heart and soul in? Is it delegatable? Mm-hmm. And how do I do it? So I understand that. I think one thing you've worked on so hard is kind of creating this culture in your company that makes it so that the people who you're delegating to understand what kind of place you're creating and what responsibility they have to the culture of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We do a lot of different things when I kind of pull the girls together and ask them for their feedback. We just had a team meeting earlier today, just a couple hours ago, and we're getting ready to go into Ridgewater College for a college visit. And so the way that we do that is a little bit different, and we want to make sure that we, get active and interacting with the students there. And so we voted on what's the theme for the school visit. And then today we talked about, what do we want to do when we go there for that activity? And I really, I just kind of sit back and I watch them all say, well, this is a good idea, or I think we should do this. And I'm like clapping. I'm like, this is exactly what this is all about. It's not about me telling you what to do. It's about all of you guys coming together and saying, this is really cool. This is what I want to do. I do the same thing with the empowerment program. It evolves and changes all the time. They're my alumni, my girls that are working for me. So I want their feedback. I want them to tell me, like, how was that experience for you? And how can we do it differently? When we interview people, we pull the team all together for that. And I've heard that can be intimidating for people coming in and interviewing with us because they're like, oh, I heard they do a team interview there. Well, but that might be kind of nerve-wracking coming in as an applicant. But if you think about if you're part of that team culture and you get to make that, help make that choice of what your work environment's going to be like and who you're going to work next to, that's really kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's not about me and what I want. It's about how we're all doing this together. My business isn't my business. It's ours. Like, I don't know. I've always thought of it that way.
That's what's so unique about you, Toni. Your generosity of spirit around what you're there to do and who you'll include and how they can participate is incredible. It really is. So you're growing. Do you have anything you want to share about the vision for what you want to see happen with your business in the next few years? What kind of impact you want to have?
Yeah. I mean, when we went through reinvention, I think one of the biggest things that I took away is to maybe create some sort of event that gathers more people that, young people in this industry, maybe not even in this industry, but just bringing people and empowering them and helping them kind of through some of their challenges and wondering, what they're going to do with their life, or I don't know.
So an event for young stylists?
Could be for young stylists. I'm still trying to figure out the details. But yeah, I mean, you've encouraged me to kind of look back to my 20-year-old self and kind of think about what kind of things I needed at that time. And so I'm trying to...
Yeah. Well, and our team was excited about the idea that more people can be impacted by Toni, because an event like that would give more people exposure to your kind of unique perspective and your positive energy.
Yeah, I think that, it's kind of a big mission to say I want to change the industry, but I think that it could change the industry. I think it can really change the way, I think about how many people are discouraged from going to beauty school because you're never going to make a living doing that. I hear people say that all the time. Their family or friends have discouraged them for coming into this industry. And I'm like, it's a pretty amazing industry. Like, if you think about, especially now after we've gone through a pandemic, like physical touch and being with other people that lift you up and empower you or make you feel good, there's not many industries that are licensed to touch people, your doctor. Who loves going to the doctor? Like, would you rather go to the spa? It's kind of a big deal.
But you make such a great point. I never thought of it that way. Like, you have this right place, right time kind of opportunity to be a healing, helping, empowering place for people who need it more than ever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
coming out of a tough, dark time for salons, is it possible that you're now in this sort of amazing role that is sort of energized because we just went through a really tough time?
Yeah, I think people really value, taking care of themselves now. Maybe more of our spa services are less of a luxury, looked at less of a luxury and more as I really do think that I need that. A massage is not just about fluff and buff. A massage is about changing your well-being.
Yeah, really good. So thinking about COVID, and boy, you went through some tough times. You were shut down. You were hit hardest of almost any business. And you came through it like a champ. Your social media was on fire, and you just were inspiring. All the other businesses are like, well, I guess I can't give up because look at Toni. She's making lemonade out of lemons over there. So what have you done with your business, or what would you do if we thought we were facing another stretch like that of struggle? Is there anything you've done differently now than you were doing pre-COVID that would make you a little more resilient?
Yeah, I mean, we got really creative because I kind of did that flip in my business. I call it like I essentially flipped my business upside down on its head when I went from rental into employee. And I did that at the end of 2019. And so then in March of 2020, we were closed. So I was right at the beginning of my first round of the empowerment program. And we were doing training. And I think the biggest thing that I took away from it was that we did a lot of things digitally from home and used a lot of technology to do some of those things. But then something that we kept trying to think of, how do we stay connected with our people? Like, they still need us even if they can't come into our business. So how do we do that for them? How do we show up, still keep showing up for them? So we did different, I can't say we did a great job at it, but we did something, and we were present. We were in front of people. We were doing, facial sessions from home. I was delivering little home kits that they needed with product in them. And I was getting on a Zoom call and teaching them how to, do this facial on themselves. And it was fun, but essentially it's a whole nother business model. So we did it the best we could with what we had. And I think, it served its purpose at the time, but I think there would have to be a whole lot more thought process going into it. But I guess we kind of did the baby steps of it. I mean, we know how we could do things to still work with people.
I think you're not giving yourself near enough credit. I think I know how it feels to be behind something like that. It can feel a little messy, but from the outside looking in, I think you were an inspiring survivor of some really tough times, and you made the best of it, and you were super creative, and that was inspiring for everyone to watch. Even I don't know how it felt on the other side. Sometimes it feels vastly different from that side than it does on the front, but
yeah, it was a challenge. I mean, it was like every other working mom in the world that was trying to work from home with their young kiddos, and it was challenging, but we made it happen.
Yeah.
And we trained in the empowerment program. The girls, we got, mannequin tripods and got them set up in their homes, in their bathrooms, or, different places in their homes to train on mannequin heads and practice. And yeah.
So you suffered through COVID unknown financial, personal anxiety, stress. We know this, and it was not easy. Was there anything good that came out of COVID? Was there anything you can say, that wouldn't have happened had I not had that time to reflect, or any silver lining at all? Because I also, I know that the struggle was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think I knew that going into the pandemic and being closed and training with these girls in the empowerment program, that when we were able to reopen, this was going to be like a once-in-a-lifetime chance for brand new stylists coming straight into our industry to really build their clientele. So I would say that people were so happy to get their hair cut. It's like I've worked in the industry for a long time, and I still had open spaces on my schedule. And I have brand new girls coming out of school, somebody that's been working with me for 6 months, and her schedule's full for a couple weeks. I mean, that's incredible. Like, I don't know. I feel like people, they had a whole different value for the services that we were providing too for a while after we reopened.
And an appreciation, maybe.
Yeah. And it was a great opportunity for new stylists that I was working with and mentoring through all of this. Like, this is going to be it's going to be tricky, and it's not easy. It wasn't easy for them to step in and fully be booked and ready to go. And there was a lot of personal development and, talking through, some roadblocks that they had. And because that's a lot for them, but it's also a really good opportunity too. So I learned how to be supportive, like to be that really, come alongside them and say, hey, you got this, you can do this.
I hadn't thought of that, but the pent up demand on top of the renewed appreciation for the services had to have been a rush. Yeah.
And it hasn't slowed down, so that's a good thing. But
right.
We want to bring on more people to go through our empowerment program to kind of work through that. So,
well, I know you are an incredible part of your business community in New London as well. I think you play a huge role in keeping that community thriving and being a leader in the community of business owners. So thank you for all you do in that respect.
Thank you.
And we hear that all the time. Is there anything, Toni, if you had a young entrepreneur in the room, assuming they couldn't work for you, because they should if they could, but let's just say they're going to open their business somewhere else, what advice would you give them? What things have you learned that you would share?
You have to continue to learn and evolve and grow. And so going through programs like what you offer for like startup, I think just really having a good idea of why you want to do this, because that's what's going to fuel you through all the hard stuff. Like, why are you doing this? Because I want to empower people. I want to change people's lives.
Any last things you want to share? It's been an incredible journey alongside you. I think one thing that strikes me about you, Toni, is that you have such a amazing passion that, and you said earlier when we were talking ahead of the recording that you have so many opportunities right now, it's hard to know which way to go, right?
Yeah.
So how do you take that why understanding and say, okay, how do I decide? How do I use that to decide which direction to go?
Still working a little bit hands-on with some of my clients and the impact that's making, doing massage and some different services that I do. And I know that I can make such a difference for them, but I also know that if I can make a difference for a team of people, they can impact so many more people than who I can just on an individual one-to-one basis. So sometimes I get kind of stuck in that because I'm so used to being that hands-on person, and I don't think that's my role anymore, but that's what I'm still sometimes wondering about. So I think that, our why is we believe in empowering people to be the best version of themselves. And I want that to be an impact for our clients, but also for my staff. And so I need to be that person that does that for my staff, not necessarily for my clients, because if I can do it for my staff, they can then do it for so many more clients.
And that is the great shift you've made. That is the great shift from it. You've exponentially expanded the ripple effect of that good work, right?
I think that, women that they're empowered and they're inspired by people, and they come into the salon and they get rejuvenated, they live a better life. And then everybody that's around them lives a better life too. It just kind of trickles. It's like a wave effect.
From what I understand too, the stylists even benefit from those relationships and the feedback from your clients too. Like it's like a circular thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so much about building their confidence when they're, young and fresh in this industry. It's about helping them to believe in themselves, really. And I remember being there.
I'm grateful that you're doing what you're doing. I'm sure there's lots of people who would say the same, that you're impacting every day. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything you want to add? Any thoughts about the future or where you're headed?
I think about expanding, and I think that someday that will be in my future. I'm not sure if that means just a larger facility here in my community or if it means that I'll be kind of trickling into other communities and having multiple locations. I'm not sure. I'm going to kind of run out of space where we're at eventually.
Yeah, and bravo to you for being a mom and a community leader and a business owner all at the same time, which is a difficult thing to do. And you do it brilliantly. And I know it's not easy. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Toni. I think that is a great way to wrap it up. And thanks, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you at the next episode. Thanks for listening to Lost and Found. If you want to learn more about our startup programs, go to startupscene.cc. Watch for more episodes and hear more stories from entrepreneurs and small business owners across the Midwest who were lost and then found something that changed everything. Thanks.